everybody out there. I know you're used to normally talking to Will or looking at Will, but today you get to see me, Erin. So as most of you know that have been following along on our Jeep Lifestyles webpage and our YouTube channel, we have taken to naming our Jeep projects. We did have the Project Terracon, which was the JK that was brought home and promptly ripped apart and rebuilt bigger and better. My favorite so far until now is our FC Lee FC150 that we actually got to take up to the Canadian border. That was a really cool trip. And now we're introducing a new project. So this is a 2020 Gladiator truck. Pretty excited about it. It's going to kind of be the same as with every build that we do. It's going to be better, bigger. Our title sponsor for this build is going to be Teraflex. We have a ton of boxes over here on the wall, and that's, I think, half of them. So this will completely change underneath it. We are also going to throw some Milestar 40-inch tires on this thing. I think they're about this tall, so you know it's going to be lifted. It'll be a challenge to get in, but hey, you know, you got to have a challenge in life. So we do have other projects. This little green teal Willys, that one actually got to go cross country, gosh, 15, 20 years ago with Will and a partner at the time. So we have projects, we love them, and now we're on to this baby. So if you're curious as to what we're naming this one, we're gonna finally open it up and check it out. And if you don't know the history on this name, I suggest you go ahead and do your history. It is a Gladiator. Everybody, meet Crixus.
That's basically, it's kind of a low rider right now.
This looks kind of silly, doesn't it? Sounds like
It's a Gladiator, so the first thing you got to do is get you some breakover angle. There't only one way to do it. Do it right.
we're gonna need some height, I think.
Let's say
I think that ought to do it. I think that's a good place to start. We'll just we'll build it around that.
instead of 40s, it just looks ridiculous when it isn't lifted yet. You're like, how does that even fit? No, it does.
Oh, it'll fit. We'll make it fit. Perfect. That's what we're going with. I like it. I wanted to show how simple Teraflex makes it to actually paint by numbers. If I had a Bob Ross outfit, I'd be wearing it right now and putting a happy little tree in the background on the trail we're going to go wheel. But they make it very simple, and as you can see, there is a lot of paperwork. They have the best instructions out there. But I like to put all this in order, so if I need to reference torque specification as I'm completing a new component, as I'm going through and building, then this is a quick, easy reference, and then I save all of this stuff. So after I do a shakedown run, or if I just down the road want to check anything, then I've got it quick at hand. But as you can see, they make it so simple with the paint by numbers platform they've got here, and each individual number or box typically has its own instruction set with it. So I wanted to point that out before I toss these boxes and get them out of my way. So again, hats off to Teraflex for their very specific and detailed set of instructions. Since our first step in the Teraflex kit is going to be unhooking the factory track bar at the axle side and reinstalling and mounting a new track bar mounting bracket, I wanted to give myself a little extra room, so I lifted this up. I'm going to go ahead and take the factory skid plate off. I'll go ahead and lower it back down on the ground. That way it'll keep the center, or the axle centered, while I go ahead and unhook that, so things don't shift too much while I'm unhooking and getting ready to mount that new bracket. If we're going to throw a suspension lift on this, Tires got to come off to access some stuff. This is one of the things that I had a bit of a challenge with right here is the factory brake line bracket. You need to take this off, of which I'll do now, but I left it mounted so I could pry this thing open, and I tried screwdrivers, pry bars. What I found worked best was getting on here with a set of vice grips and prying it open while gently, of course, being careful not to damage the brake line. So now that that's out of there, I can take this thing off and get it out of the way. But that thing is a bit of a pain to get open, but you can get it open. In order for this actuator connector to be disconnected, I don't know if you guys, I'm sure there's some of you out there that have trouble with these things, fighting them. This little pin here pushes in, goes out, and then you just push it and it pops apart. So I was cautious with this one because I've broken others. It seems like anytime these little clips are in there, I fight them, but I just thought I'd show you that. Okay, now that I've got the actuator disconnected, the axle vent tube disconnected, all that under here, I did get the brake line brackets pried open and got the factory brake line brackets removed. That was kind of a pain, and again, the vice grips turned out to be the best thing to get on that, pry it open to get those loose. So now that that's done, I'm going to move to the control arms, get those things loosened up so we can drop this down a little bit, get ready for our new springs, upper and lower control arms. We will be getting the shocks out of the way as well. Since I already loosened these control arm bolts up in an earlier step, it's just going to be a matter of taking the bolts out, removing this lower front control arm. That's it. With the coil spring out of here, we'll take the spring isolator and this factory bump stop out. It just kind of have to wrestle with it a little bit to get it down and out. Cuss it, you know, bargain with it, whatever you got to do. Pops right out, but hang on to this. That'll go back on later, and this will be replaced. With the factory spring isolator, which will be reused, and the factory bump stop that we pulled out. Now, this is one of those steps. We're putting in the speed bumps, the bump stops, and these things, it's one of them steps that if you've done several of them, or even if this is your first, it's kind of a sucky part, but you have to cut this off. So it's one of those things where measure twice, 3, 4 and 5 times if you have to. Just make sure that you get that 2 inches, and you want it as straight as possible. They have a tool that they recommend for pipe cutters. I don't have one, so I'm probably just going to take this and use a cutoff wheel. I've done it on JKs. The speed bumps are nice bump stop sets, but like I said, this can be a little nerve-wracking just knowing that you're cutting something so permanent off of there, and you only get one shot at it, so you want to make sure that it's measured right and cut straight. So that's what we're going to tackle next. So as you can see, I've made little markings for the measurements. Then what I'm going to do is tape the upside, or the top of it if you will, so it gives me a good straight edge, and then when I tape that, I'll measure to confirm that I've got 2 inches all the way around, and then that'll give me a guideline on that cutoff wheel. So that's kind of my process, how I'll go about it. I happen to have some red electrical phase tape, so I went ahead and used that. Obviously black on here is going to be kind of hard to see, but double checked everywhere. It's 2 inches all around, so we're going to throw some sparks here, get this cut off, get that speed bump stop kit from Teraflex put in, and that way we're set for when we hit the dunes or desert and just want to get out there and go fast. So gonna get this cut off, get that installed. We'll move to the other side and do that as well. Okay, got the passenger side all cut out, ground down so it's level and even. I'm just gonna file the rough edges out, put a little paint on there, and then we'll install these speed bumps. So you can see the coils are in, got the upper speed bump kit put in. Kind of fought the coils a little bit, but as you can see they're in there. The last thing to do now is to put this spacer in the bottom to actually give you this little little tool to hold the nut to get underneath here. So I'm going to go ahead and slide that in and work on getting that dude put in. Last piece for the bump stop kit is the passenger side speed bump spacer on the bottom. I did have to take this bracket off because there's simply no way to access it or get in there without doing so in order to get this nut on the back side. Most important thing about a good Jeep build is having a great shop dog. Always important. She can't quite fetch tools, but she's good company. Safety first, kids. We got our template cut out for the fenders. We finished arts and crafts class, got our template cut out. But I wanted to point out, Falcon makes this so easy, Teraflex as well. And you've seen in the past, if you've watched some of our other videos, they've simply been created because the instructions that come with them suck on a lot of different applications. Engineers write as though you know what they're thinking, and it's not translated into layman's terms or what the average Joe who's a hobbyist working on things needs to know. So that's why we create these things, to help people just kind of get a visual on what some of these builds or upgrades things are. But I wanted to point this little template out that Falcon makes. This is for the Rubicon model, and in here there is a fender number that you can match up to make sure that you have the right template that you're cutting out. but it even shows you where you need to trim that out for the reservoir to go in. But the instructions, Teraflex does such a great job, Falcon does such a great job on explaining things with great pictures, great descriptions. So they have got to be probably one of the best in the industry that I've seen that translates what you need to do an install like this. So I just wanted to take a second and point that out. Hats off to those guys. Wanted to commend them on it because it is crucial to understand what you're doing when you're putting stuff like this on. So again, arts and crafts. Now we get to cut some more plastic. I'll get your inside the line, kids. If you look at this bracket, this is passenger side on the upper control arm. I didn't notice it until I was going to torque things. I wasn't paying close enough attention, but I need to take this control arm back out so I can flip this bracket around because there's no way for me to get into these screws. So I'll take this adjustable joint off, pull this off, put it back in so I can access those to torque it for the final tightening of the control arms. Before we get started on the back, we're going to go ahead and install the components sent with the hardware from the travel accessory kit. All right, we are at item number 10. This is the travel accessory kit. Of course, I'm curious as to what could be included in Teraflex's travel accessory kit, knowing that they've always got you well covered with all of their components, accessories, and items. So, let's see here. We've got the Teraflex Trail Series medical kit. We're going to hope that this doesn't need use. We've got a little speed stick in case things get stressful out there. And should you have passengers in those stressful situations and the screaming starts, they've got some earplugs included in there. We've got a toothbrush and toothpaste. So it is a well-rounded travel kit, but here we've got dude wipes. As you can see, I've swapped the breather as well as the clamp on the other end and loosely attached these zip tie clamps. Get them into place. Takes a little force and a little wiggling, as you can see. New hose installed. I wanted to point out a thing on this travel hardware kit that they include. This wiring harness, they provide a little extension for both sides. You have to pry this out of the frame and pull it out of this little keeper, if you will, and then it should go on here, but it's going to interfere since this has a place for it to slide into and this one doesn't. I'm just going to zip tie it on there and probably keep it back here a little bit so I can still have ample room to plug this into here like such. This is how it will look with the new extension put in there. And this, as you can see, like I said, I just zip tied that on. Make sure not to forget to push that lock pin back in before putting this back into the frame. There you go. The next and final step for the travel hardware kit, we're going to take this factory brake line off and we're going to replace it with the much longer braided stainless steel. There's going to be a couple washers under here you're going to want to keep. Make sure you've got something on the ground to catch that brake fluid or you'll have a little bit of a mess. There's going to be a little that falls out of here, not an absolute ton, but enough that it'll make it a mess. Got a clip to remove. These little copper washers you're going to want to save. And might be a good idea to take this boot down or off before you get that brake fluid all over your hands, and even while that clip is still on there. Break that loose. Try not to wiggle that factory hard line up top too much. Alright. We'll wiggle that down and disconnect it from that hard line or the ABS line. Alright, we'll hand start this thing. Just for reference, the new nut on the new line is 17 millimeter where the old was a 16. Get this clip put back in there. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to have something to ply with or press. Okay, so that's good and solid. Make sure these washers and the bolt that you'll reuse are clean. And they do provide torque specs for the new line and that old bolt, so I will follow this up with a torque wrench, but that's it. We'll do the passenger side. Let's get started on the back. Got the new coil springs in, the retainers, everything is torqued down. Got the front of the housing, the pinion here, supported with this strap. As you can see, the driveline has been lowered with the spacer kit when we put in the travel accessory stuff. So now we'll get these control arms swapped out with the new adjustables. Wearing a hat because I keep finding sharp spots, so I'm getting new scars and cuts. So that's why the hat's on here, to try and keep me from poking new holes in the top of my head. But that's it. We're going to go on to the next step. Now I got to take this axle bolt off of the bottom of the rear control arm so the new relocation bracket for the upper can go on. So that's next. I want to show you how this new rear control arm bracket goes into place. And I left, initially I said when you took this bottom one loose, just to keep the lower control arm on there for this reason. So this new bracket is going to go on here mounted like this, but it's also going to be used first as a template. And then I'll mark those holes, get ready to drill. Here is the rear control arm correction bracket, what it should look like installed. So now we're going to go ahead and get the control arms put in. I didn't want to make everybody watch the agonizing, tedious process of me fighting and putting in the new coils, as well as the control arm brackets and the rear upper control arm relocation brackets. But I got them all in. The instructions, obviously Teraflex has an outstanding step-by-step process. It's easy to follow, so if you have any questions, if you haven't done stuff like this, it walks you right through it. So with all of this stuff in, I can get ready to install the speed bumps, then the rear Falcon shocks, get this thing on the ground. I got to do the rear track bar yet, but we're getting close to completion. If I don't get it done today, then I should be able to wrap it up tomorrow. But making good progress. It's coming together, real happy with it, and pretty excited to get it out and drive it. Torque it down and get the bump stop in. Just get it started in here, so like the other side, once I get it down on the ground and have a little more leverage than standing under here, I'll get it up in there. I've got this close to the measurement that I think it should be at. I've got the axle relatively centered. I'll have to adjust, of course, a time or two, get it on the ground. But this will give me a place to start. All right, finally have all of the rear end components put in. Just put the brake line and ABS line anchors on there. I've got them loosely tied to this sway bar link so I can check the clearance while I cycle the suspension. I've got everything torqued and rechecked. Did get the extended travel sway bar installed. That thing was a nightmare trying to do by myself. So if you've got an extra pair of hands on that, and that alone will save you time and frustration getting it assembled. But got it on here. Now I got to get it on the ground. Gonna bleed these brakes, get the wheels and tires on it, and get it ready for a shakedown run so we can kind of let that suspension settle and go through and just check torque on everything. So that's it, we're making progress. Yeah, they are.
Well, how's it going?
Well, putting shocks on.